Well, it was a very uneventful day starting out. I had finished my schooling for today, for that particular day. We had walked 1 block up to get on the bus on High Street, right there in front of where the Booker T. Washington students would get on the bus, and rode that bus downtown Montgomery, where we had to transfer to another bus, which was the Howland Gardens bus. And that bus would take us directly home. Now, Claudette was older than I was. I had just, I was, I think 12, maybe it just turned 13, if so, something like that. Well, you would get on the bus, all of us who went to Booker Washington, who lived in the city and lived in certain areas, would catch the bus. And we would walk to High Street and get on the bus, and we would pay our fare, and they would give us a transfer to get on our next bus, and we would go to Dexter Avenue and wait for our next bus, and Howland Gardens was the bus that we would catch. And just a group of us, just us along Dexter Avenue, the bus stops on that street where we would go. On that particular day, the bus was pretty full. I recalled when I got on, it was so full that I paid in the front and had to go to the back to get on, and that would happen often, pretty often. And a lot of the working people were on the bus, a lot of elderly Black men who had worked during that day, had their lunch pails in their hands and were sitting on the back seat. All of those areas were full, and I managed to get a seat, but Claudette sat, there were like 2 seats up from the back door, and those seats were really designated for white people. And the only time you could sit there without any problems would be if there were no white people standing. But if there were some standing, you would be asked to get up. That bus driver was named, his name was Robert Clear, I believe. And it was terrifying to me because he had such a bad attitude. He would stare at you in the rearview mirror, and it was just so intimidating. And as a child, that was really scary. On that particular day, I was really, really afraid for Claudette, because, and not only for Claudette, for myself too, and for all of us, because he kept staring in the rearview mirror, and he asked Claudette, when this white woman got on the bus, and standing, he told Claudette, and there were 2 other ladies on the seat with Claudette, if they would move. 2 of the ladies moved, but Claudette refused to get up. And so I'm saying to myself, oh my God, what's going to happen? So I wanted her to get up, but she refused to get up. So he asked her several times, and she said, well, first she just looked out of the window, and then she said, this is my right. I paid my fare, it's my right, and I'm not getting up. So he decided that, he told her, if you're not going to get up, I will call the police. And he drove from, he went down and turned on Commerce. When he went almost to Madison and Commerce, he pulled the bus over, and he called the police, and 2 police officers came onto the bus and tried to talk to Claudette, asking her if she was not going to get up, really in a threatening-like way. And Claudette didn't appear to be afraid, not intimidated at all. And she told him, no, I'm not going to move. This is my constitutional right. I paid my fare, and I'm not getting up. Well, they just took her, one on each side, and dragged her off the bus, and hitting her with the batons on her legs, and put her in the car and continued. You could see they appeared to have been hitting her in the car. And that was a very, very frightening situation. Some of those men on the bus were my church members. Mr. Reese especially, I remember him, and I sort of wanted them to do something, but it would not have come out good had they done something. They did the right thing not to, but at that time, I was so afraid. I wanted someone to step in to help her, and I was petrified. So I just wanted her to do that. And I just knew, had it been me, I would not have sat there, because you hear people talking about your parents giving you the talk. My parents had 2 daughters, and they gave us the talk as the daughters. When you go places, you know right from wrong. I don't want to have to come get you out of trouble. And so we knew that if the law said, and the rule was that you get up, then we had no choice but to get up. It was really, really sad, and as a child, I should not have had to. Nobody should have. But those fears stayed with me, because I saw so much during those times. Even though my mother and my father would always say, when you go places, people talking to you, look them in the eye. Don't look around on the floor. There's nothing down there. You look the people in the eye. Hold your head up. Hold your shoulders up. Push your shoulders back. Even my mom would tap us on the back sometimes. Straighten up, Let somebody know that you're proud of who you are. But as a child, that's very intimidating when you see a grown man. He was an older man too, Mr. Clear, and he would just stare, give us those mean stares in the rearview mirror, just because he could. And so I felt very intimidated by that. Claudette was our neighbor. Claudette, we lived, I think, like 3 houses before you got to the end of the street, our street, and our street was dead right into Claudette's street, where she lived. And her house we were just like 3 houses apart. I was a friend to Claudette's sister, Delphine. I knew her family very well, Mr. and Mrs. Colvin. I always thought they were her grandparents. I still don't know if they were. And she had an Aunt Velma who stayed there. But Delphine was her sister, and Delphine was my friend. And she'd come to our house, I'd go to theirs, and we'd play together. And Delphine came down with polio. Her grandfather had to come to our house to pick her up. She couldn't walk, and carried her away. And she succumbed to polio after being at the sanatorium for a little while. Well, as I said, I was not around Claudette as much. It was her sister, but because of that situation, and we were on the bus, my sister was on the bus too, we had conversations with the civil rights attorney, Fred Gray, who came to our house to prepare us for the court hearing. And we actually went, but they never called on us. And I really was somewhat relieved, because I was still so intimidated by that, I didn't want to do it, but I had agreed to do it. Scared to death, 12 years old. Yes, and that was life-changing, We saw so many things that were not right. There was this lady that had bought groceries downtown. There was this H.L. Green's, you could buy groceries in the basement, and she had bought groceries. and she had 2 arms of groceries, and she was waiting for her bus, not the bus I was riding. I don't know what had transpired, but this white man came, was fussing with her, and he started running toward her, and she started running with 2 arms of groceries. Those bags fell, her groceries went everywhere. She never came back to try to get those groceries. Those was some of the kinds of things that you would see nobody would help. Everybody would just stand and look, just petrified that this is happening. And as a child, I didn't feel like I could do anything. When grown people didn't do anything, grown men, but they were afraid to. So it's not that people were coward, it's just that they were afraid because they knew the consequences, and the law was just not on our side. We did not ride the bus. We had to walk to school. Now that was one thing. When my parents didn't want us out there demonstrating or doing anything like that. But if there was a situation where they had bus boycotts, things like that, we adhered to what the protesters were doing. They didn't want us, my parents didn't want us out there doing it, but we didn't dare go and ride the bus, do any of those things that would be different from what the protesters were striving for, because those were important things. They were just brave people out there fighting for what was right. You know, I think people were doing what they thought was best. Claudette was a child, and I think with Rosa Parks being an adult who had been exposed to a lot of cultural things, cultural activities, events. She was used to operating in the public eye. She had a nice professional demeanor. I really think they did the right thing, because Claudette was a child. And I don't think that she probably would have any negative feelings toward Rosa Parks or anybody else who didn't make her the one to focus on. I just don't think that if we want something to be successful, and we have people who are working to help us to do that, then I think, and we see that they have been successful in other areas, we just have to help work with them to make those things as successful as possible. Even if you were to ask her, I think she would say that was the right thing, because she was a child, and sometimes we speak as children and don't do a lot of things that we should do. Well, I think if you have to treat people with dignity. Just because we look differently, there's no need to try to make one feel less than the other. And I think Judge Johnson was just right on when he made those decisions to treat all of us fairly, and those Jim Crow rules and regulations just had to go. Just because the pigmentation of my skin says that I don't look like this young lady doesn't mean that I'm less than. So I just think he was ahead of his time for him to make those wonderful, rare decisions that affected our lives in such a special way. Well, I would tell him that it took a lot of courage. He had to have a lot of Jesus in him to go against all of those evildoers and evil thinking people and those who felt that they were superior. And I just think that I would say thank you. Thank you is not enough, but it's so appreciated that he could rise above all of the negativity, all of the violence, all of the name calling, to do the right thing. And he did the right thing. That's what we all should do, try to do. But it takes a lot of courage to do that, because quite often we don't have that. And he, you can't be popular when you're trying to do the right thing. Sometimes you're isolated for doing that. And as in his case, he endangered himself and his family just standing up for what is right. I've always known that Judge Johnson was a very fair person. And as my mom would say, that he was for the right thing. I remember that there was some bus boycotting that was right around in the area right next to the courthouse. But I don't recall anything else of coming into this courthouse for anything else other than I served as a juror once, but that's about it. Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I don't know anybody else who would be more deserving than him. No, I just think that this is wonderful that you're doing this. I think he deserves this special attention. And I'm grateful to all of those who had the courage to go out and to stand for what was right, to help us to get this far toward being all that we can be. Well, I think if we were to not try to judge people, put up roadblocks, just open the door and let people go through, work as hard as possible. It's like opening up a bird cage to see how far the bird is going to fly. You don't be that obstacle to keep people from being all that they can be. And if you would just give people that opportunity, you just would see what a blessing it would be, and how enriching and how wonderful it is that people will take advantage of that opportunity and will go far. I'm so proud of my son. I'm proud of you, too, for having done this interview. You've asked me some questions that are very thought-provoking, and I just think it's an opportunity for all of us to see what you're doing here. And I just thank you, and I'm going to let my son know, too.